I was in my room, watching random videos, when I stumbled across some content about Japan and its slums. I realized that poverty in Japan isn't something people talk about much, and that made me decide on something. I'm going to make a video showing this hidden side of the country. I'll show you things like the doya, shed light on how Japan's invisible people live, and reveal a reality most people have never even heard of. When you think of Japan, you probably picture a clean, advanced country, full of technology, punctual trains, and safety. And yes, that's all true. But there's another side to the story that rarely gets shown. Even with all its order and structure, Japan also has poverty, and it's more common than most people think. In Tokyo, for example, there's an area known as Sanya. It doesn't appear on modern maps as an official neighborhood, but it remains one of the clearest examples of social exclusion. For decades, Sanya has been a place where temporary workers lived, especially those in construction and other tough, low-paying jobs. Many of them had no job security, no support, and in many cases, no home. After World War II, this situation only got worse. As Japan was rebuilding, these workers became the backbone of its cheap labor force. But even as the economy grew, Sanya was left behind. Today, there are still people living on the streets, in abandoned buildings, surrounded by clear signs of neglect, right in the middle of one of the richest cities in the world. And the most curious part? Most tourists don't even notice. They walk by, snap photos of the colorful signs, but they don't see what's hiding behind them. It's as if poverty was forcefully hidden, erased from travel guides, YouTube videos, and Tokyo's storefronts. Sanya isn't an isolated case. It's an uncomfortable reminder that no country, no matter how developed, is immune to inequality. And often, what doesn't show up in the photos is what says the most about a place. If you're still watching, it might be hard to imagine this side of Japan, a country the whole world sees as a symbol of progress, but one that hides deep scars. Today, I want to take you down this invisible path, a path most tourists never notice and many locals avoid talking about. In the 1950s and 60s, Japan was rebuilding its identity. Cities were growing fast, the economy was booming, and there was a huge demand for manual labor. That's when thousands of men left their families, their villages, and migrated to Tokyo. Sanya, that's the name of the area, became the heart of this workforce. It was a place where days started early, bodies were pushed to the limit, and no one complained. The promise was simple: work hard today, live better tomorrow. But for many, that tomorrow never came. Over time, the major projects ended, the jobs disappeared, and what remained was an entire neighborhood abandoned by the government and by society. Sanya didn't disappear physically, but it was erased from official maps. Yes, literally, the name of the neighborhood was removed, as if hiding the problem would solve it. Today, life for those who remain is harsh. You'll find abandoned buildings, cramped boarding houses where elderly people live alone, and one of the highest concentrations of homeless people in Japan. People who worked their whole lives, but now have no family and not enough pension to survive with dignity. And the saddest part? Many choose to suffer in silence. Asking for help is still seen as a sign of weakness. It's the culture of silence, the culture of gamen, and that only deepens the isolation. So next time someone tells you that Japan is a country without poverty or social problems, remember Sanya. It's strange to think about, but the most modern city in the world still has streets where the future never arrived. While researching Japan for days, I came across a term that almost no one talks about, but it keeps popping up when you start digging deeper: doigai. These places are like ghost zones hidden within vibrant metropolises. Tiny pockets of abandonment surrounded by skyscrapers and neon signs. In them, time feels frozen, along with the hope of those left behind. At first, I thought it was just another old neighborhood, but the more I saw, the more I understood. These are the places where the city hides the people who don't fit into its showcase. People who spent their entire lives in hard, invisible jobs, now living in tiny rented rooms for just a few coins. Sometimes, not even that. They sleep in community centers, emergency stairwells, or subway stations. The most striking part? There's no chaos, no open misery, no revolt, just silence, just a quiet presence. And the more you walk through Tokyo, the more you realize how the city was designed to keep ignoring this reality. Everything is beautiful, clean, efficient, as long as you don't look in the right direction. These doigai aren't just poor neighborhoods. They're urban scars, reminders of a time of reckless growth, where thousands of lives were used like bricks and then forgotten. And then, suddenly, it hits you. The Japan the world sells isn't the whole Japan. But Sanya isn't an isolated case. Other Japanese cities also have forgotten zones, like Yokohama, where inequality is even harder to hide. There, the contrast is sharper. Entire neighborhoods with crumbling infrastructure sit right next to sleek shopping districts, like two different worlds glued together on the same map. And inside these neighborhoods, you'll find the famous doya, tiny rooms with paper-thin walls and almost no comfort. They were meant to be temporary housing, but for many people, they became a final destination. Places like Sanya are just a few examples of forgotten areas in an otherwise advanced country. They're zones where inequality shows up in unexpected ways, like washing machines installed directly on the sidewalk. You won't see that in the touristy or more developed parts of Japan, but in poor neighborhoods, you might come across setups like this, quick, accessible, and born out of necessity. And vending machines? Yes, they're everywhere in Japan. But in areas where life is tougher, you'll notice a difference. It's more common to find machines selling alcohol and cigarettes, a reflection of the local lifestyle and demand. It's a stark contrast to the polished, tourist-friendly areas, where machines usually offer soft drinks and snacks. And it doesn't stop there. In these poverty-stricken zones, regulation is often loose or non-existent, creating space for underground economies and even activities that, while technically illegal, have become part of daily life. Pachinko, for example, is everywhere, even though gambling is officially banned in Japan. But in these forgotten areas, people exploit a legal loophole. The tokens you win in Pachinko can be exchanged for cash at nearby shops. For many with no other options, it's just another way to survive. In neighborhoods like these, the city's underworld isn't hidden, it's just part of the scenery. These areas also stand out for how neglected the public spaces are. Unlike what you usually see in Japanese vlogs, trash piles up on the sidewalks, and basic services are far less efficient. The streets, normally spotless elsewhere, look worn down and forgotten here. In the past, the term doya referred to simple lodgings for temporary workers, a practical solution for people migrating to big cities in search of jobs. But after the economic crisis of the 1990s, these areas changed drastically. They stopped being just places to pass through and became long-term shelters for those who had been pushed to the margins. Far from the city centers, many settled there while trying, day after day, to find temporary work. And in these places, the homeless population doesn't fit just one mold. The most visible are the ones you see sleeping in subway stations, under bridges, or even inside 24-hour convenience stores. But there's another group, more discreet, harder to notice, known as kuda, day laborers who live off short-term gigs. They take on basic, low-paying physical jobs, often with no contracts, no security, and no idea what the next day holds. This kind of work, which goes back to the post-war era, keeps many stuck in a cycle of instability and exhaustion. And the hardest part? Many of these workers are elderly, people who grew old trapped in this endless loop. They're still there, visiting the same markets, the same pachinko parlors, the same bars. It's like they live in a version of Japan that never makes it into tourist posts or promo videos. A Japan that isn't on postcards, but is part of the real, lived experience for those on the margins. And perhaps the strangest part of all this is that many people in Japan don't even know these places exist. They live for years in the same country without ever stepping foot in these neighborhoods, unaware of what hides in the shadows of the modern city. Now that you've seen this other side of Japan, what do you think about this hidden reality?